The Galactic Council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive station that had witnessed 50,000 years of peace. Inside its grand hall, representatives from 847 different species gathered under the soft blue light that cycled to accommodate everyone's biology. Some breathed oxygen, others methane, some saw in infrared, others in ultraviolet, but they all agreed on one thing: peace was the only way forward. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the human section, her dark eyes scanning the assembly. She had held this position for 12 years now, and in that time, she had mediated disputes, negotiated trade agreements, and helped dozens of species find common ground. The other ambassadors liked her. They called humans the peacemakers and the bridge builders. It was a title Sarah wore with pride. Beside her, a holographic display showed Earth and its 47 colony worlds. Small blue dots scattered across the galactic arm, each one a testament to humanity's expansion into the stars. They were modest colonies, nothing like the vast empires other species controlled, agricultural worlds, research stations, and peaceful settlements where humans could raise their families far from Earth's crowded cities. The largest of these was New Eden. 2.3 million souls called it home. Sarah had visited twice, walking through its parks where children played under an orange sun. She remembered the smell of fresh bread from the bakeries and the sound of laughter echoing through the town squares. It was everything humanity had hoped to build when they left Earth 75 years ago. Ambassador Chen? A voice pulled her from her thoughts. It was Ambassador Kelth of the Vrin Collective, his tentacles gesturing in what Sarah had learned meant friendship. Your mediation proposal for the mining dispute was brilliant. Both sides accepted, Sarah smiled. Thank you, Kelth, I just helped them see what they already knew. Neither side wanted war. Exactly why we value your species, Kelth said, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into standard council speech. Humans understand that words are stronger than weapons. Sarah nodded, but she noticed something across the chamber. The Zrathi delegation sat in their section, their reptilian faces twisted in what she had learned to recognize as contempt. The Zrathi Imperium was one of the Council's military powers, a species that had conquered 12 other species before joining the Council 5,000 years ago. They still had the largest military fleet, though Council law strictly controlled how it could be used. The Zrathi ambassador, war leader Krenth, stared directly at Sarah. His eyes were cold, calculating. Sarah had dealt with him before. He saw humans as weak, soft creatures who hid behind laws and diplomacy because they lacked the strength to take what they wanted. The session ended, and Sarah made her way through the corridors toward the human embassy. Her assistant James met her halfway with a worried expression. Ambassador, we have a problem, he said quietly. The Zrathi have moved a fleet toward New Eden. Sarah's heart skipped. How many ships? 73 warships. They're claiming it's a training exercise in unclaimed space. New Eden isn't in unclaimed space, Sarah said sharply. It's a recognized human colony under Council protection. I know, but the Zrathi are saying the borders were never properly filed. Some technical loophole. Sarah immediately called for an emergency council session. She spent the next 6 hours presenting maps, documents, and surveys proving New Eden's legitimate status. The Zrathi war leader sat silent through it all, occasionally showing his teeth in what might have been a smile. When Sarah finished, the council deliberated. The Minoran representative suggested sending a diplomatic envoy. The Kelvin suggested forming a committee to review the border claims. The Tarash suggested waiting to see if the Zrathi actually did anything hostile. With respect, Sarah said, her voice tight with control. We're talking about 2.3 million human lives. My people, we need action, not committees. Ambassador Chen, the council speaker said in his ancient, creaking voice. The Zrathi have not committed any hostile act. Moving ships through space is not a crime. If they enter New Eden's orbit without permission, then we can discuss sanctions. Sarah looked around the chamber. She saw sympathy in many eyes, but also fear. The Zrathi were powerful. No one wanted to confront them over what might be nothing. Session adjourned, the speaker declared. We will reconvene if circumstances change. Sarah immediately sent a message to Earth, to Admiral Marcus Webb at Fleet Command. Webb was an old man, a veteran of Earth's defense forces back when they were actually needed. For 75 years his role had been mostly ceremonial. Humanity's 12 military ships were outdated by Council standards, barely enough to patrol trade routes and respond to the occasional pirate. "Admiral," Sarah said when his weathered face appeared on her screen, "I need you to move our ships toward New Eden. Quietly. The Zarathi are up to something." Webb's jaw tightened. "How many ships do they have there?" 73. "We have 3 ships within range." "Sarah, if they want to fight, I know, but maybe if they see we're paying attention, they'll back down. The Council won't act unless something happens. Then let's hope nothing happens," Webb said. But Sarah could see the doubt in his eyes. For 3 days, Sarah barely slept. She watched the feeds from New Eden. The colony had been alerted, but there was nowhere to evacuate to. No time to get millions of people off-world. The governor, a woman named Patricia Ross, sent daily updates. People were scared but trying to stay calm. They trusted the Council. They trusted that laws and treaties would protect them. On the 4th day, the Zarathi fleet moved into orbit around New Eden. Governor Ross opened communications immediately. "This is Governor Patricia Ross of New Eden Colony. You are in violation of Council law. Please state your intentions." War Leader Krenth's face appeared on every screen across the colony. "Your colony is built on territory claimed by the Zarathi Imperium. You will evacuate within 1 hour, or we will consider it an act of aggression. We have 2.3 million people here," Ross said, her voice steady despite the fear Sarah could hear beneath it. "We cannot evacuate in 1 hour. Please contact the Council. They will confirm our legal status." "The Council has no authority here," Krenth said. 1 hour. Ross immediately sent messages to every Council member to Earth to anyone who could help. Sarah rushed to the Council chamber demanding an emergency session. It took 40 minutes to gather a quorum. 40 minutes while the clock ticked down on New Eden. "The Zarathi must withdraw immediately," Sarah said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "This is an act of war against a Council member species." "We are investigating the legal status of the colony," the speaker said. "Preliminary findings suggest there may be merit to the Zarathi territorial claim." "There is no merit," Sarah shouted, abandoning diplomatic protocol. "This is murder! If you don't act right now, you're complicit in genocide." The Council erupted in debate. Some species called for sanctions. Others urged caution. The Zarathi delegation sat silent, waiting. The hour expired. On New Eden, Governor Ross sent one final message. "To anyone listening, we are 2.3 million human beings. We are teachers and farmers, engineers and artists. We have children here, babies. Please, someone help us." The first orbital strike hit New Eden's capital city. It vaporized instantly, a flash of light that could be seen from space. Then another strike and another. The Zarathi fired methodically, precisely, turning the entire planet's surface into molten glass. Sarah watched it happen on the chamber's main display. She watched her species die, watched cities burn, watched everything she had believed about the Council and civilization turn to ash along with New Eden. It took 6 hours. 6 hours to kill 2.3 million people, and the Zarathi broadcast every moment of it across all Council channels. When it was over, War Leader Krenth addressed the Council. "Let this be a lesson to species who forget their place. The strong survive. The weak are consumed. This is the natural order." Sarah stood in the silent chamber. No one spoke. No one met her eyes. The speaker finally said, "This is a tragedy. We will form a committee to investigate and determine appropriate responses." "A committee," Sarah repeated, her voice hollow. "These matters take time, Ambassador Chen. Justice must be thorough. We estimate 8 to 14 months before we can recommend a course of action." 8 to 14 months. 2.3 million people were dead, and the Council wanted 8 to 14 months. Sarah walked out of the chamber. She didn't return to the embassy. She went straight to the communications room and sent a coded message to Earth. Just 3 words. "Protocol reversion authorized." Within hours, every human ambassador began leaving Council space. Human peacekeepers abandoned their posts. Trade ships docked at Earth and didn't leave again. The Council sent inquiries confused by humanity's sudden withdrawal. They received no response. On Earth, Admiral Webb stood in a command center that hadn't been used in 75 years. Around him, officers worked at consoles, bringing systems online that had been dormant for 3/4 of a century. Deep in Earth's moon and Mars's factories, in the asteroid belt's foundries, machines awakened. Webb pulled up a file marked Contingency Omega. It was a plan made 75 years ago, when humanity first joined the Council. A plan that hoped it would never be needed but prepared for it anyway. How long until we're ready? Webb asked. Full mobilization in 30 days, sir, an officer replied. Make it 20, Webb said. We have colonies to evacuate and a war to prepare for. Across human space, ships began moving. Not the slow, peaceful vessels the galaxy knew, but faster, darker shapes that emerged from hidden docks. Colony worlds received orders to evacuate all non-essential personnel. Research stations uploaded data and prepared to relocate. The galaxy watched with confusion. Some species thought humans were running away in fear. The Zrathi celebrated, claiming they had broken humanity's spirit. But a very few alien historians began researching Earth's past. They looked beyond the sanitized files humanity had provided when joining the Council. They dug into Earth's actual history, and what they found made their blood run cold. Humanity hadn't developed faster than light travel to explore the stars. They had developed it to escape a dying planet ravaged by their own wars. The primitive weapons humanity used weren't primitive because they didn't know better. They were scaled back to meet Council regulations. Earth's military hadn't been disbanded when they joined the Council. It had been mothballed, waiting. And now something was waking up. On New Eden's ruined surface, in the ashes of 2.3 million lives, the wind blew across glass. There was no one left to mourn, no one to bear witness. Just silence and the fading heat of orbital bombardment. But Earth remembered, and Earth was done pretending. 24 hours after New Eden died, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The chamber that usually buzzed with diplomatic chatter sat heavy with uncomfortable silence. Representatives shifted in their seats, avoiding each other's eyes. Everyone had seen the broadcasts. Everyone knew what had happened. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the human podium for what she knew would be the last time. She looked different now. The warm smile that had made her famous across the Council was gone. Her eyes were red from crying, but they were also hard, colder than anyone had seen before. Honorable members of the Galactic Council, she began, her voice steady despite the anger burning underneath. 2.3 million of my people are dead. Men, women, children, infants. They were murdered while you watched. While you debated. While you formed committees. The speaker shifted uncomfortably. Ambassador Chen, we understand your pain. Do you? Sarah interrupted. The chamber gasped. No one interrupted the speaker. Do you understand what it's like to watch your species die while the galaxy does nothing? My people trusted you. They believed that council laws meant something. They died believing help was coming. She activated her display, showing images from New Eden before the attack. Parks full of children. Markets full of families. Schools and hospitals and homes. Then she showed the after. Nothing but glass and ash. This was New Eden. Now it's a grave. The largest mass grave humanity has ever known. And your response is to form a committee? Ambassador Kelth of the Vryn Collective spoke up, his tentacles drooping in what Sarah recognized as genuine sorrow. Ambassador Chen, please understand we want justice. But the legal complexities, there are no legal complexities. Sarah's voice rose. The Zrathi committed genocide. They murdered millions of civilians. They broadcast it as a warning. What legal complexity exists here? The Minoran representative offered. We must follow proper procedures. If we act hastily, we set dangerous precedents. The investigation will be thorough. 8 to 14 months, Sarah said flatly. That's your timeline. 8 to 14 months to decide if murdering 2.3 million people was wrong. War leader Krenth stood in the Zrathi section, his reptilian face showing what might have been amusement. The human becomes emotional. This is why lesser species should not hold territory they cannot defend. We acted within our rights. Your rights? Sarah turned to face him directly. You have the right to murder children? We have the right to defend our territorial claims, Krenth said smoothly. If your species was stronger, this would not have happened. Blame your own weakness, not our strength. Several council members murmured agreement. Sarah saw it then. The truth she had been too naive to see before. The council didn't care about justice. They cared about maintaining the status quo. The Zrathi were powerful, and powerful species got to make the rules, I see, Sarah said quietly. Then louder, I understand now. She pulled a small data chip from her pocket and inserted it into the podium. This is humanity's official response to the Council's failure to act. A new image appeared on every screen in the chamber. Admiral Marcus Webb's face, stern and unforgiving. Members of the Galactic Council, Webb's recorded message began. For 75 years, humanity has abided by your laws. We limited our military. We resolved disputes peacefully. We trusted that Council membership meant protection and justice. New Eden has proven that trust was misplaced. The chamber erupted in whispers. Webb continued. Effective immediately, Earth is withdrawing all personnel from Council operations. All human peacekeepers, mediators, and diplomatic staff will return home. We are recalling our ambassador. Sarah watched the Council members' faces shift from confusion to alarm. Furthermore, Webb said, his voice growing harder, humanity no longer recognizes Council authority over human affairs. We do not recognize Council weapons treaties. We do not recognize Council military limitations. And we do not recognize the Council's ability to prevent us from seeking justice for our dead. The speaker stood. This is unacceptable. You cannot simply... But Webb's message wasn't finished. To the Zarathi Imperium, you murdered our people. You will answer for that crime. How you answer is up to you. The message ended. Sarah removed the data chip and put it back in her pocket. The chamber exploded into shouting. Representatives demanded explanations. The speaker called for order. The Zarathi delegation laughed. Sarah walked toward the exit. Ambassador Kelth intercepted her, his tentacles reaching out in a pleading gesture. Sarah, please. Don't do this. War will only bring more death. The war already happened, Kelth, Sarah said softly. You just didn't notice because it was only humans dying. Now maybe you'll pay attention. The Council can still help. Give us time. Sarah laughed bitterly. 8 to 14 months while the Zarathi move on to our next colony? While they finish what they started? No, Kelth, we're done waiting for the Council to save us. We'll save ourselves. She left the chamber and never looked back. On Earth, the reality of humanity's decisions sank in. News broadcasts showed Admiral Webb addressing the planet from Fleet Command headquarters. Behind him, through reinforced windows, ships moved through space. Lots of ships. More ships than Earth was supposed to have. Citizens of Earth and her colonies, Webb said. I won't lie to you. What comes next will be difficult. The Council has failed us. The Zarathi have murdered millions of our people, and now we must do something we hoped we'd never do again. We must go to war. He paused, letting that sink in. 75 years ago, when we joined the Galactic Council, we made a choice. We chose to be better than we had been. We chose peace over violence. We limited our weapons, our military, our capacity for destruction. We did this because we remembered our past and we didn't want to repeat it. Webb's eyes grew distant, but we also prepared. We prepared because we knew the galaxy might not be as civilized as it claimed. We built contingencies. We maintained capabilities. And now those preparations are the only thing standing between the Zarathi and the complete extinction of our species. All across human space, the evacuation continued. Colony worlds that had taken decades to build were abandoned in days. Millions of people packed what they could carry and boarded transport ships. They left their homes, their farms, their lives behind. Governor Patricia Ross had been right. 2.3 million people couldn't evacuate in an hour. But given 20 days, humanity could move entire planets. The colony of Sanctuary was next on the Zarathi list. Intelligence confirmed that 70 more Zarathi warships were moving toward it. The colony had 890,000 people. Admiral Webb gave the evacuation order personally. Strip it bare, he told the evacuation coordinator. Take everything that moves. If the Zarathi want to claim territory, let them claim empty dirt. By day 15, Sanctuary was a ghost town. Every human was gone. The Zarathi fleet arrived 5 days later to find empty streets and abandoned buildings. War leader Krenth was furious. They run like cowards, he told his fleet commanders. No matter. We will hunt them down colony by colony. They have 45 more settlements. Eventually, they will run out of places to hide. But something puzzled the Zarathi scouts. Where were the refugees going? The transport ships left the colonies, but tracking them became difficult. They used strange routes, doubled back, split up. It was like humanity was trying to hide something. In the outer reaches of human space, far from Council observation, something was happening. Ships that looked nothing like the peaceful vessels humanity had used for 75 years emerged from hidden facilities. Dark hulls covered in angular plating, weapon ports that didn't match any Council database. engines that burned hotter and faster than anything humanity was supposed to have. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the newest ship, the TDS Remembrance. It had been under construction in a hollowed-out asteroid for 30 years. Around it, dozens of similar vessels formed up in battle formation. "How many ships total?" Webb asked his second-in-command, Captain Jennifer Torres. "Counting the ones still being armed, 215 combat-capable vessels, sir. Another 300 will be ready within 60 days. Webb nodded slowly. The Council thought humanity had 12 ships. Outdated, barely functional patrol boats. They had no idea about the fleet that had been secretly constructed over 75 years of peace. And the weapons? Fully operational. Kinetic kill vehicles tested and ready. Directed energy systems online. Electronic warfare suites active. Sir, I have to say, some of this technology..." Torres hesitated. "It's cruel. We designed these weapons to kill efficiently without mercy." "We designed them to win wars," Webb corrected. 75 years ago when we joined the Council, we hoped we'd never need them. But we remembered what we were. We remembered what we could do. And we made sure we'd never be helpless again." Torres looked out at the fleet. "Do you think it's enough?" "The Zrathi have thousands of ships. The Zrathi have never fought anyone who actually wanted to hurt them," Webb said. "Their wars are all about territorial disputes, limited engagements, Council-approved skirmishes. They've never faced a species that was willing to do anything to win." He turned to Torres. "We're not here to win a Council-approved skirmish, Captain. We're here to teach them what happens when you push humanity too far." Back on Council Station, the assembled species continued their debates. Legal scholars argued about jurisdiction. Military advisors assessed the threat of a human uprising. Economic ministers worried about the loss of human trade. Ambassador Kelth tried to advocate for quick action, but he was drowned out by voices urging caution. The Council had maintained peace for 50,000 years precisely because it moved slowly, carefully, never rushing to judgment. "If we act rashly," the speaker intoned, "we risk destabilizing everything we've built. The Zrathi claim territorial rights. We must investigate that claim thoroughly before taking sides. 2.3 million people are dead." Kelth's translator barely kept up with his agitated clicks and whistles. "How much investigation is needed?" "As much as required to ensure justice is properly served," the speaker said. In the Zrathi section, war leader Krenth watched the debates with satisfaction. The Council was paralyzed exactly as he had predicted. They would debate for months, maybe years. By then, humanity would be broken, scattered, unable to resist Zrathi expansion. He sent a message to his fleet commanders. "Prepare to attack the human colony of New Horizon. If they have evacuated it as well, proceed to the next one. Keep moving until we find humans to kill. Show the galaxy what happens to species who forget their place." But while the Zrathi prepared their next attack, something changed. Human ships, the dark new ones, began appearing in unusual places. They weren't defending colonies. They were moving toward Zrathi territory. A Zrathi patrol encountered one such ship near the border. The patrol commander demanded identification. The human ship responded by locking weapons on the Zrathi vessel. Then it fired. The Zrathi ship never had a chance to send a distress call. It simply ceased to exist, torn apart by weapons that moved faster than the crew could react. When the wreckage was eventually found, Zrathi military analysts couldn't understand what had happened. The damage patterns didn't match any known weapon system. This happened again and again. Zrathi ships near human space began disappearing. Not running away, not retreating, just gone. War leader Krenth tried to dismiss it as accidents or equipment failures, but deep down something bothered him. He had seen the human ambassador's eyes when she left the Council. He had seen not fear but promise. Humanity wasn't running. They were preparing. And that thought, for the first time in his long military career, made Krenth nervous. 30 days after New Eden burned, the Zrathi fleet moved toward Sanctuary with confidence. War leader Krenth commanded the operation personally from his flagship, the Vengeance of the Strong. 73 warships accompanied him, each one bristling with weapons that had conquered worlds. The humans abandoned another colony, his tactical officer reported as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Sensors confirmed no life signs on the planet. Krenth bared his teeth in frustration. "They flee like prey animals, no matter. We will pursue them until they have nowhere left to run. Eventually, they must make a stand, and when they do, we will crush them." The fleet moved into orbit around Sanctuary. The abandoned cities below stood silent, streets empty, buildings dark. It was eerie seeing a colony world so completely deserted. Usually there were stragglers, people who refused to leave their homes. But humanity had been thorough. "Begin planetary scans," Krenth ordered. "Catalog everything. This world belongs to the Zarathi now." That's when the sensors officer shouted a warning. "Contact!" Multiple ships emerging from the outer system. Krenth spun toward the tactical display. "How many? 20, 30? "Still counting, sir. They're not registering in our databases. Unknown ship configurations. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They were nothing like the peaceful vessels the Zarathi had seen before. These ships were sleek, dark, covered in angular armor plating. They carried weapon systems that made the Zarathi tactical computers flash with warnings. "Sir, those energy signatures. I've never seen anything like them. Our systems can't identify their weapons." Krenth stared at the display. Something was wrong. These weren't the ships of a frightened, fleeing species. These were warships. "Real warships, hail them," Krenth ordered. "Demand their surrender." But the human ships didn't respond with words. They responded with targeting locks. Every Zarathi ship suddenly found itself painted by dozens of targeting lasers. Warning klaxons blared across the fleet. Defensive systems activated automatically, shields powering up to maximum strength. "They're targeting us," the weapons officer shouted unnecessarily. "All ships, battle stations," Krenth commanded. "Prepare to." The human ships fired. The weapons didn't look like anything in the Galactic Council's databases because they weren't Council-approved technology. They were older, human-designed, built on principles humanity had supposedly abandoned when they joined civilized space. Kinetic kill vehicles launched from human railguns, accelerating to 70% the speed of light in seconds. They punched through Zarathi shields like they weren't there, tearing into hulls with devastating force. Directed energy beams focused to microscopic points sliced through armor plating, designed to withstand plasma fire. And the electronic warfare. The Zarathi discovered that their communication systems, their targeting computers, their sensor arrays, all relied on protocols that humanity had helped develop during their time on the Council. Protocols that apparently had backdoors built into them. Zarathi ships went blind. Targeting systems fed false information. Communications became static. Half the fleet was shooting at phantom targets while the other half couldn't coordinate their fire at all. In the chaos, the human fleet moved with precision. They targeted command ships first, then point defense systems, then engines. Every shot was calculated, efficient, lethal. Krenth watched his fleet being systematically destroyed. Ships he had commanded for decades, crews he had trained personally, dying in explosions of fire and venting atmosphere. 11 minutes. That's all it took. 11 minutes to turn 73 warships into debris. "Sir, we have to retreat," his tactical officer screamed, but there was nowhere to go. Human ships had positioned themselves around every escape vector. "All power to weapons," Krenth ordered. "If we die fighting." The vengeance of the strong fired everything it had at the nearest human vessel. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, particle beams. The human ship's shields flared as they absorbed the incoming fire, held for 3 seconds, then failed. Krenth felt a surge of savage joy. "We hurt them. All ships focus fire on," but the damaged human ship simply retreated behind its sister ships. Another vessel moved forward to take its place, shields fresh and weapons hot. The message was clear. Humanity had ships to spare. Then the humans stopped firing. The Zarathi fleet, or what was left of it, floated dead in space. Engines disabled, weapons destroyed, but life support intact. The crews were alive, trapped in coffins of their own ships. A transmission came through on emergency frequencies. Admiral Marcus Webb's face appeared on every working screen in the Zarathi fleet. "War Leader Krenth," Webb said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Terran Defense Directorate. Your fleet is disabled. Your crews are alive because we chose to let them live. Remember that." Krenth said nothing, his claws digging into his command chair. "The Zarathi Imperium murdered 2.3 million human civilians." Webb continued. "The Galactic Council did nothing. So now we will do something. You have 72 hours to surrender your government for trial. Every member of your war council, every fleet commander, every official who authorized the attack on New Eden. If you refuse, we will consider it a continuation of hostilities." Webb leaned forward. And Krenth saw something in the human's eyes that made his blood run cold. It wasn't anger. It was worse. It was certainty. And if any other species interferes with human justice, we will remember that too. You wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy. Congratulations, you've succeeded. Our place is wherever we decide it is. The transmission ended. Krenth sat in the darkness of his disabled flagship, listening to damage reports from across his fleet. Not one ship was combat capable. Not one crew member had died, though hundreds were injured. The humans had surgically dismantled his entire force without even trying to kill them. What kind of species could do that? What kind of weapons allowed such precision? And more terrifying, what kind of restraint did it take to hold back when you had such power? The message from Webb broadcast across all Zrathi worlds and throughout Council space. The reactions were immediate and varied. On Council Station, the Assembly watched in stunned silence as the battle footage played. The Zrathi fleet, supposedly one of the most powerful in the galaxy, destroyed in 11 minutes. Ships that should have taken hours to disable were torn apart like toys. Where did they get those weapons? Someone asked. A Vryn analyst, one who had been researching human history, stood to address the council. They didn't get them. They made them. 75 years ago, when humanity joined the council, we required them to decommission their military. They showed us 12 outdated patrol ships and claimed that was everything. We believed them. The analyst pulled up documents. But according to Earth's actual history, they had nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons. They had fought wars that killed tens of millions of their own species. And we thought 12 patrol boats was their entire military. They lied? The speaker asked, incredulous. No, the analyst said carefully. They followed the letter of the law. They decommissioned their active military. But apparently they never stopped building. Hidden facilities in their asteroid belt, on their moons, in deep space. For 75 years, while we thought they were peaceful farmers and diplomats, they were preparing for exactly this scenario. The implications hit the council like a shockwave. Humanity hadn't been weak. They had been waiting. In the Zrathi Imperium, panic spread. The Supreme War Council convened an emergency session. News of the fleet's destruction had reached the population, and for the first time in thousands of years, Zrathi citizens felt fear. We must respond, one War Council member roared.
Mobilize the full fleet.
Show these humans what real power looks like. But the Supreme Commander, an ancient Zrathi who had led military campaigns for 300 years, held up a clawed hand for silence. Did any of you watch how they fought? They didn't just destroy our ships. They disabled them. Every shot placed perfectly to cause maximum damage with minimal casualties. That level of precision requires technology and training we don't possess. You suggest we surrender? Another council member hissed. I suggest we think, the Supreme Commander said coldly. The humans gave us 72 hours. That means they're not planning an immediate follow-up attack. They're giving us time to consider. Why? Psychological warfare, someone offered. Exactly. They're showing us they can destroy our fleets whenever they want. They're demonstrating that our military superiority is an illusion, and they're doing it without killing our people, which denies us the moral high ground of righteous vengeance. The War Council fell silent. One member finally asked, What do you recommend? I recommend we learn everything we can about humanity in the next 72 hours. Real history, not the sanitized version they gave the Council, because I suspect we've made a terrible mistake, and I want to know exactly how terrible before we make it worse. The research teams worked around the clock. What they discovered horrified them. Humanity's history wasn't just violent, it was efficiently, systematically, brutally violent. They had fought 2 world wars before even reaching space. Wars that killed over 100 million people with primitive weapons like bullets and bombs. When they developed nuclear weapons, they used them. When they created chemical weapons, they used them. When they engineered biological weapons, they considered using them and only stopped because they feared destroying themselves. Humanity hadn't joined the Galactic Council seeking protection. They had joined seeking redemption. They were a species trying desperately to be better than they had been, and the Zrathi had just reminded them what they were capable of. A junior analyst made a connection that sent chills through the research team. Look at their weapons development timeline. They went from basic gunpowder to nuclear weapons in 500 years. From nuclear weapons to relativistic kill vehicles in 200 more. Their rate of weapons innovation is exponential. What's your point? The research director asked. My point is that they've been in space for 800 years. They've been council members for 75. So what have they been developing for the last 8 centuries that we don't know about? The weapons they used against our fleet are terrifying. But what if those aren't their best weapons? What if they're just the ones they're willing to show us? On Earth, Admiral Webb stood in the command center, watching deployment reports. The Zrathi had 72 hours to respond. Webb expected they would refuse. Proud warrior species always did. Admiral, Captain Torres approached with a data pad. Intelligence reports that the Zrathi are researching our history. They're learning what we were before the Council. Good, Webb said. Let them learn. Let them understand what they've unleashed. Sir, some of the crew are asking, how far are we willing to go? If the Zrathi refuse to surrender, what's our response? Webb was quiet for a long moment. Captain, do you know why I agreed to this posting 75 years ago? Why I spent my entire career preparing for a war I hoped would never come? No, sir. Because I remember Earth's last war before we joined the Council. I was a child, but I remember. I remember cities burning. I remember refugee camps stretching to the horizon. I remember my mother telling me that humanity had to choose, evolve or die. Webb turned to Torres. We chose to evolve. We joined the Council. We tried to be better. For 75 years we succeeded. But the galaxy mistook our evolution for weakness. They thought because we chose peace we had forgotten how to make war. He pulled up an image of New Eden before the attack. Children playing in a park. 2.3 million people died because we weren't scary enough. Because the Zrathi thought they could kill us without consequence. So now we need to be scary enough that no one ever makes that mistake again. That doesn't answer my question, sir. How far are we willing to go? Webb's jaw tightened. As far as necessary to ensure this never happens again. But not one step further. We're not becoming what we were, Captain. We're showing the galaxy what we could be if we wanted to be. There's a difference. The 72 hours ticked down. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if the Zrathi would bend or if humanity would strike again. In the depths of space, human fleets continued to gather, dark ships assembling in formations that would have terrified any military analyst who saw them. Humanity had dropped the mask. Now the galaxy would see what lay beneath. The 72 hours expired with no response from the Zrathi Imperium. The Supreme War Council had debated every hour of those 3 days, but pride won over prudence. They were the Zrathi, conquerors of 12 species, holders of the largest military fleet in Council space. To surrender to a species they had dismissed as weak would be unthinkable. Instead, they mobilized everything. From military stations across Zrathi space, warships launched. From orbital dockyards, carriers deployed their fighter squadrons. From deep space reserves, dreadnoughts that hadn't moved in centuries powered up their engines. 4,000 warships, the largest military force assembled in 2,000 years, gathered at the Zrathi home system. War leader Krenth, rescued from his disabled flagship, stood before the Supreme War Council. His scales still bore scorch marks from the battle at Sanctuary, a constant reminder of his humiliation. The humans have perhaps 200 ships, Krenth reported, maybe 300. They fight with precision and unknown weapons, but they cannot stand against 4,000 vessels. Numbers will prevail. The Supreme Commander wasn't convinced. You told me the humans disabled your fleet without losing a single ship. What happens when they face our full might? They will die, Krenth said with certainty. Or they will run. Either way, we win. Across all Zrathi communication networks, the government broadcast a message. Images of the massive fleet, ships as far as sensors could detect, engines burning like stars. The Supreme Commander himself addressed not just the Zrathi people, but all of Council space. To the humans who dare threaten us, you have shown us your tricks, your hidden weapons, your deceitful preparation. But now you face the true might of the Zrathi Imperium. 4,000 ships stand ready to defend our honor and our territory. Surrender now or we will exterminate your species completely. No colony will be spared. No human will escape. This is your final warning. The message ended with images of the fleet beginning to move. All 4,000 ships accelerating toward human space in a formation that stretched across light years. On Earth, in the command center buried deep beneath the surface, Admiral Webb watched the Zrathi fleet's movements with Captain Torres and the command staff. 4,000 ships, Torres said quietly. Sir, even with our advantages, those numbers are what they have, Webb interrupted. Now let me show you what we have. He pulled up a tactical display of human space. Torres expected to see the 200 ships they'd deployed to Sanctuary, maybe another 100 in reserve. What she saw instead made her breath catch. Ships, hundreds of them, thousands of them, emerging from hiding places throughout human territory. From hollow asteroids, from dark moons, from stations disguised as research facilities, every single one a warship bristling with weapons that shouldn't exist. How? Torres couldn't form the question. 75 years, Webb said simply. 75 years of building in secret. 75 years of preparing for the day the Council's promise of protection proved worthless. We hoped this day would never come. But we made damn sure that if it did, we'd be ready. The final count appeared on the screen. 3,742 combat-capable human vessels, not counting the ones still under construction, or the automated defense platforms or the weapon systems that didn't require ships at all. My God, Torres whispered. We've been building an entire military while pretending to be pacifists. We weren't pretending, Webb corrected. We genuinely wanted peace. But wanting peace and being defenseless are two different things. Now let's show the Zrathi the difference. The human fleet divided into 7 separate formations, each one assigned to a different Zrathi homeworld. Yes, worlds plural. The Zrathi Imperium spanned 7 planets in their home system, a rarity in the galaxy. It made them powerful but also vulnerable. 7 targets to defend instead of 1. The Zrathi detected the human fleet movements and adjusted their formation, trying to position forces to defend all 7 worlds. But there was a problem. They had 4,000 ships to cover 7 planets, while humanity had apparently pulled 3,700 ships from nowhere. It's impossible, Krenth said, staring at the tactical display in the war room. Where did they get those ships? Our intelligence said. Our intelligence was wrong, the Supreme Commander said grimly. Everything we thought we knew about humanity was wrong. The human fleets arrived at each Zrathi world simultaneously. The coordination alone was impressive, requiring faster-than-light communication and precise timing. But what happened next shocked every observer in Council space, because the Council had monitoring stations near the Zrathi system, and they broadcast everything. The humans didn't immediately attack. Instead, they established orbital positions around each Zrathi world and began broadcasting. The same message repeated in every language the Zrathi spoke. People of the Zrathi Imperium, this is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Terran Defense Directorate. We are not here to exterminate you. We are not here to glass your worlds as you glassed New Eden. We are here to bring justice to those who ordered the massacre of 2.3 million humans. The message continued. Your government has refused to surrender those responsible for genocide. Therefore, we will remove your government. What happens next depends entirely on you. Civilians will not be harmed. Infrastructure necessary for survival will not be targeted. But every military installation, every government building, every command center will be destroyed. Then came the part that would be remembered throughout galactic history. We are broadcasting the locations of every target we will strike. Evacuate them. Move your families away. We will begin our attack in 6 hours. Use that time wisely. The Zrathi War Council erupted in confusion. They're giving us 6 hours? They're telling us what they'll target? It's a trap, Krenth insisted. They want us to evacuate our military bases so they can what? The Supreme Commander asked. Destroy empty buildings? What tactical advantage does that give them? The answer became clear over the next 6 hours as Zrathi civilians, seeing the human broadcast, began evacuating military zones. Some went willingly. Others were forced by local authorities who realized they had no way to stop the humans if they decided to attack civilian areas. The Zrathi military tried to use the 6 hours to prepare defenses, to fortify positions to ready for the assault. But the human fleet just waited, ships in perfect formation, weapons ready but silent. When the 6 hours expired, the humans attacked. But it wasn't the overwhelming bombardment the Zrathi expected. It was surgical. Precise. A military base would be hit by exactly enough force to destroy it completely, but not 1 iota more. Weapons designed to minimize collateral damage, to kill infrastructure without killing people. From orbit, human ships launched missiles that struck with pinpoint accuracy. Buildings exploded, but neighboring civilian structures stood untouched. Power plants that fed military installations went dark, but hospitals remained lit. It was warfare conducted with the precision of a scalpel, not the brutality of a hammer. The Zrathi fleet tried to intervene, tried to break through to defend their worlds, but the human formations were positioned perfectly. Any Zrathi ship that approached was targeted by dozens of human vessels. After losing 200 ships in the first hour without scratching the human formations, the Zrathi pulled back. On the surface of Zrath Prime, the capital world, citizens watched their government's military might being systematically dismantled. The Supreme Command Center, a fortress that had stood for 3,000 years, crumbled under human fire. The orbital defense platforms, supposedly impregnable, went dark one by one. But more disturbing than the destruction was the restraint. Human ships could have targeted anything. They had the firepower to level cities, to glass worlds, just as the Zrathi had done to New Eden. But they didn't. Every shot was calculated to minimize civilian casualties. It broke something in the Zrathi psyche. They were warriors. They understood strength and violence, but this was mercy delivered through overwhelming force. It said more clearly than words ever could, "We can kill you all whenever we want. We're choosing not to. Remember that." On the third day of the siege, something happened that no one expected. The civilian population of Zrath Prime rose up against their own government. They marched on the government buildings demanding their leaders surrender to human justice. They had watched 3 days of surgical strikes, had seen humans go out of their way to avoid civilian casualties, and they compared it to what their government had done to New Eden. The comparison didn't favor the Zrathi War Council. They showed mercy, a Zrathi mother told a news crew, her children huddled behind her. "Our government murdered millions of their young, and the humans showed mercy. What does that make us?" The riot spread to all 7 Zrathi worlds. The military, demoralized by watching human ships destroy their bases without breaking a sweat, began refusing orders. Some units even joined the civilian protesters. On the 41st day after New Eden's destruction, the Supreme War Council fell. Not to human weapons, but to their own people. The Zrathi civilians, led by military officers who had seen enough, arrested the entire government and broadcast a message to the human fleet. "Admiral Webb, this is Commander Thask of the Zrathi Defense Forces. Our government has been removed. The individuals responsible for the attack on New Eden are in custody. We are prepared to turn them over to human authority for trial. We ask only that you honor your promise to spare our worlds." Webb's response was immediate. "Commander Thask, we will honor our word. Stand down your forces and transmit the coordinates for prisoner transfer. This conflict is over." The human fleet held position for 3 more days while the transfer was arranged. War leader Krenth and 47 other Zrathi officials were taken into human custody, along with complete military records proving their roles in ordering the attack on New Eden. But before the human fleet departed, Admiral Webb broadcast one more message. This one went to every planet in Council space, not just the Zrathi worlds. "To all species of the Galactic Council, this is Admiral Marcus Webb. Humanity joined your alliance 75 years ago seeking peace. We limited our military, followed your laws, and trusted in your protection. New Eden proved that trust was misplaced. Webb's face was hard but not cruel, angry but not hateful. The Zrathi murdered 2.3 million of our people. The council formed committees and debated for months. So we took justice into our own hands. We destroyed the Zrathi military capability, removed their government, and took those responsible for trial. We did this without glassing their worlds, without targeting civilians, without becoming the monsters they tried to turn us into." He leaned forward, and every being watching felt the weight of his words. Humanity is returning to the Galactic Council, but on new terms. We will no longer limit our military to appease species who see restraint as weakness. We will no longer trust Council promises of protection without the means to protect ourselves. And we will enforce one simple rule: genocide will be met with swift, overwhelming response. Webb's expression softened slightly. "We don't want to be your enemies. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to live in peace, raise our children, and pursue our dreams. But if you threaten that peace, if you harm our people, we will respond. And now you know exactly what that response looks like." The transmission ended. The human fleet began departing Zrathi space, leaving behind a broken military, a transformed government, and 7 worlds full of people who would never forget what they had witnessed. On Council Station, the assembled species watched in silence. Some felt relief that the conflict was over. Others felt fear at what humanity had revealed itself to be. But all of them understood that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The humans were no longer the peaceful mediators, the bridge builders, the species who could be safely ignored. They were something else now, something dangerous, something that could destroy you with precision and choose not to. And somehow, that was more terrifying than if they had simply glassed the Zarathi worlds and been done with it. Ambassador Sarah Chen prepared to return to Council Station. She stood in her office on Earth looking at a hologram of New Eden as it had been, full of life and hope. Soon she would return to the Council chamber, but she would not be the same ambassador who left. None of them would be the same. The mask had dropped. The galaxy had seen what humanity truly was, and there was no going back. 6 months after the fall of the Zarathi War Council, the Galactic Council convened for its first full session since humanity's withdrawal. The chamber looked the same, the soft blue light cycling through its familiar patterns, but everything felt different. The easy confidence that had defined council proceedings for 50,000 years was gone, replaced by nervous tension. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the corridors toward the human section. Beings from dozens of species stepped aside to let her pass. Some nodded respectfully. Others avoided her eyes. A few looked at her with barely concealed fear. Sarah understood. 6 months ago, she had been the friendly mediator everyone liked. Now she was the representative of the species that had destroyed the second-largest military and council space in 41 days. She took her seat in the human section. Above her, through the transparent dome, she could see stars. And among those stars, barely visible but definitely present, a human warship kept station. The TDS Vigilance, one of the new Guardian-class vessels, maintained orbit over Council Station. It was there, the human government had explained, to protect Council Station from threats. No one missed the unspoken message. It was also there to remind everyone what happened when Council protection failed. The speaker called the session to order. His ancient voice carried the same authority, but Sarah detected a new note of caution. The Council recognizes Ambassador Chen of Earth. The floor is yours. Sarah stood and the chamber fell silent. Honorable members of the Galactic Council, 6 months ago, humanity left this chamber in grief and anger. We left because 2.3 million of our people were murdered while you debated. We left because we realized the Council's promise of protection was worthless. She paused, letting that sink in. Some representatives shifted uncomfortably. Since then, we have taken justice into our own hands. We dismantled the Zarathi military, removed their government, and brought those responsible for New Eden to trial. 47 Zarathi officials have been convicted of genocide and war crimes. They are currently serving life sentences in human custody. Ambassador Kelth of the Vrin Collective raised a tentacle. The Council acknowledges the effectiveness of humanity's response, but we must discuss the methods used. The buildup of military force in secret, the survival of our species, Sarah interrupted. Let me be very clear, Kelth. When we joined the Council 75 years ago, we agreed to limit our military to 12 patrol ships. We did that. Those 12 ships are still patrolling exactly as agreed. Everything else we built, that was in addition to the agreement, not in violation of it. The speaker consulted his records. Ambassador Chen, the spirit of the Weapons Limitation Treaty. The spirit of the treaty was that humanity wouldn't threaten Council peace, Sarah said firmly. And we didn't. For 75 years, we kept our promises. We mediated disputes. We served as peacekeepers. We never once used our military against another Council species, until one of you decided to murder millions of us. She pulled out a data pad. Humanity is prepared to remain in the Council, but only under new terms. We've submitted a proposal for reformed Council laws. The highlights. First, all species maintain the right to self-defense, including the development of military forces adequate to protect their populations. Second, the Council will establish an actual enforcement mechanism with the authority to respond to acts of genocide or mass violence within 72 hours, not 8 to 14 months. The chamber erupted in discussion. The Minaran representative stood. Ambassador Chen, these proposals would fundamentally change how the Council has operated for 50,000 years. We've maintained peace precisely because we limit military buildups. You've maintained peace because no one wanted to upset the status quo. Sarah corrected. The moment someone like the Zarathi decided to test the system, your peace collapsed. You don't have peace. You have a prolonged ceasefire enforced by nothing but mutual convenience. A dozen representatives tried to speak at once. The speaker called for order. These proposals require extensive debate. We cannot simply then debate them, Sarah said. But while you debate, humanity will operate under the assumption that we are responsible for our own defense. We will maintain our military. We will protect our colonies, and we will respond immediately to any threat against human lives. She pulled up her next item. Humanity also proposes to serve as the Council's military enforcement arm. Since clearly you need one, the chamber fell silent. The speaker finally said, "You're offering to be the Council's military?" "We're offering to do what you should have been doing all along," Sarah said. "When a species commits genocide, when pirates attack trade ships, when anyone threatens Council members, we will respond. With force if necessary. We will be the teeth your laws have been lacking." "And who decides when force is necessary?" the Kelvin representative asked suspiciously. "The Council does," Sarah said, with a new rapid response protocol. When a member species requests protection, the Council has 72 hours to authorize or deny military response. If authorized, human forces will deploy immediately. If denied, the requesting species has the right to defend itself without Council interference. Ambassador Kelth spoke carefully. "Sarah, what you're proposing is to make humanity the most powerful species in Council space. You're asking us to trust you with that power." Sarah met his eyes. "Yes, that's exactly what we're asking. You trusted the Zarathi with a massive military for 5,000 years. How did that work out?" The silence was damning. Finally, Sarah continued, "The difference is that we don't want power. We want security. We want to ensure that what happened to New Eden never happens again, to any species. If that means we have to be the galaxy's guardians, then so be it." The debate continued for hours. Some species supported humanity's proposals. Others worried about human dominance. A few openly opposed any military buildup, clinging to the old ideals of the Council. But in the end, reality won over idealism. The Zarathi had proven that unenforced laws were meaningless. Humanity had proven they could enforce those laws. The vote was close, but the proposals passed. The Council would continue. Humanity would serve as its military arm, and the galaxy would adapt to this new reality or be left behind. After the session, Sarah walked through Council Station toward the memorial chamber. It was new, built in the last 6 months at humanity's insistence. As she approached, she saw beings from dozens of species moving through it quietly, reading the names carved into black stone. 2.3 million names. Every single person who died on New Eden, arranged not alphabetically but by family, parents beside children, siblings together, entire households memorialized side by side. Sarah found the entry she visited every time she came here, the Torres family. Miguel Torres, age 41, agricultural engineer. Carmen Torres, age 39, teacher. Sofia Torres, age 12. Marco Torres, age 8. Lucia Torres, age 4. She touched Sofia's name gently. The girl had wanted to be a pilot. Sarah had met the family once during her visit to New Eden. Sophia had been so excited, asking endless questions about space travel and exploration. Now she was a name on a wall, a reminder of what had been lost and what could never be allowed to happen again. "Ambassador Chen," a voice said behind her. She turned to see Admiral Webb in full uniform, his chest heavy with medals earned in the Zarathi campaign. "Admiral, I didn't know you were on station. I wanted to see how the vote went," Webb said, joining her at the memorial wall. "Congratulations. You got them to accept our terms." "They didn't have much choice," Sarah said. "We showed them what happens when the Council fails to protect its members. They're terrified of us." "Good," Webb said without hesitation. "Fear will keep them honest. Fear will make them think twice before starting wars they can't win." Sarah turned to face him. "Marcus, are we still the good guys? We blackmailed the entire Council. We're forcing them to accept human military supremacy. We've become exactly what we fought against." Webb looked at the memorial wall, at the endless rows of names. "You see all these people, Sarah? They trusted the Council to protect them. They believed in galactic civilization. They died because that belief was wrong. We're not the bad guys for making sure this never happens again." "But where does it end?" Sarah asked quietly. "We have the most powerful military in the galaxy now. How long before we start using it for more than just protection? How long before we become another Zarathi Imperium? Webb smiled sadly. That's why you're the ambassador and not me. Your job is to keep asking that question, to keep us honest, to make sure we don't cross the line. My job is to make sure no one ever crosses the line against us again. He put a hand on her shoulder. We need both, Sarah, the diplomat and the warrior. That's how we stay human instead of becoming monsters. On Earth, life was returning to a new kind of normal. The massive military buildup had been revealed. Ships that were once secret now openly patrolled human space. Children looked up at the sky and saw warships instead of peaceful transports. The generation growing up after New Eden would never know the peaceful humanity that had joined the Council 75 years ago. In a classroom in New Washington, a teacher named Rebecca Mills taught history to her students. Today's lesson was about the period of peace, the 75 years between humanity joining the Council and the New Eden massacre. Ms. Mills, a student named Tommy, raised his hand. Why did we pretend to be weak? If we had all those ships, why didn't we just show them? Rebecca smiled sadly. She had been a child when New Eden burned, barely older than her students were now. We weren't pretending to be weak, Tommy. We were trying to be better. Better than what? Better than we had been, Rebecca said. She pulled up images of old Earth, from before they joined the Council. Images of war, destruction, cities, and ruins. For thousands of years, humanity fought. We fought over land, resources, beliefs, sometimes for no reason at all. We nearly destroyed ourselves dozens of times. The students stared at the images with wide eyes. This was their history, but it felt alien to them. Their Earth was united, peaceful, focused on exploration and growth. When we developed faster-than-light travel and discovered the Galactic Council, we saw a chance to be something different, to join a peaceful galactic civilization and leave our violent past behind. So we did. We limited our weapons, we focused on diplomacy, we tried to show the galaxy that humans could be peaceful. And it worked, Tommy said. For 75 years. It worked, Rebecca agreed. Until someone decided to test whether our peace was real or just an act. The Zrathi thought we were weak. They thought because we chose peace, we had forgotten how to make war. Another student, Maria, raised her hand. My dad says we should have shown our strength from the beginning. Then the Zrathi never would have attacked. Maybe, Rebecca said. Or maybe they would have attacked anyway. And then we would have become the galaxy's bullies instead of its peacemakers. The truth is, we made a choice 75 years ago, and it was the right choice. We got 75 years of peace, growth, and friendship with dozens of species. But 2.3 million people died, Tommy said quietly. Yes, Rebecca said, her voice heavy, and that's the cost of our choice. We chose to trust in the Council, to believe in galactic civilization, and people died because that trust was misplaced. Now we're making a different choice. She pulled up an image of the TDS Remembrance in orbit, massive and intimidating. We're choosing to be both. To be diplomats and warriors. To seek peace but prepare for war. To trust but verify. It's harder than being one or the other. But it's the only way we can honor the memory of those we lost while staying true to who we want to be. Tommy looked out the window at the warships being constructed in orbit. Ms. Mills, will we ever get to be peaceful again? Rebecca followed his gaze. I hope so, Tommy, but first the galaxy needs to learn a lesson. They need to understand that peace isn't weakness and that humanity's restraint is a choice, not a limitation. Once they understand that, maybe we can all be peaceful together. What if they don't learn? Maria asked. Rebecca smiled, but there was steel behind it. Then we'll be ready for that, too. In the Zrathi home system, reconstruction continued. The new civilian government, elected by popular vote for the first time in Zrathi history, worked to rebuild what the war had destroyed. It was slow, difficult work, made harder by the shame many Zrathi felt when they looked at what their previous government had done. Commander Thask, who had led the military coup against the War Council, now served as defense minister in the new government. He stood at a memorial they had built for the victims of New Eden, a stark black monument carved with a simple inscription in both Zrathi and human languages. To those we failed to protect. May we never forget the cost of unchecked aggression. A young Zrathi approached him, barely more than a hatchling. Defense Minister, why do we honor the humans we killed? They were our enemies. They were our victims, Thask corrected gently. And they taught us something important. What did they teach us? That real strength isn't about how many people you can kill, Thask said, looking up at the monument. It's about how many you can protect. The humans could have killed us all. They had the power, the weapons, the justification, but they chose not to. They showed mercy when they could have shown vengeance. That's strength. The young Zrathi considered this. Will we ever be that strong? I don't know, Thask said honestly, but we're going to try. 50 years passed. A new generation grew up knowing the story of New Eden only as history. The galaxy had adapted to the new reality of human military presence. Wars between council species had become rare, not because everyone agreed on everything, but because everyone knew that human ships would appear to enforce council law. Pirates were legends, stories told to frighten children. The few who tried to operate quickly discovered that human patrol vessels didn't negotiate or show mercy to those who preyed on the weak. Humanity had mellowed somewhat, returning partially to their diplomatic roots. New human colonies flourished, this time with permanent military protection. Sarah Chen had retired after 30 years as ambassador, replaced by younger diplomats who maintained her firm but fair approach to galactic politics. Admiral Marcus Webb had retired as well, though he lived to see humanity become what he had always hoped, both peaceful and powerful, trusted and feared, diplomatic and deadly when necessary. On Council Station, a new memorial had been added beside the New Eden Chamber. This one honored the species who had been saved by human intervention over the past 5 decades. A mining colony protected from raiders, a peaceful species saved from aggressive neighbors. Refugees rescued from war zones. The inscription read, "Protected by humanity's choice to be both guardian and friend." In classrooms across the galaxy, young beings of hundreds of species learned about the period of peace, the New Eden Massacre and the awakening of humanity. Every species taught it differently, but they all taught the same core lessons. First, humanity's peace was not weakness. It was a choice, and humanity could always choose differently. Second, a species that nearly destroyed itself with its own weapons makes a terrifying enemy, but also a reliable friend. Third, there are worse things than humanity at peace, like humanity at war. On Earth, in the same classroom where Rebecca Mills once taught, a new teacher stood before students learning about their history. One student asked the same question that had been asked for 50 years. Will we ever get to be truly peaceful again? The teacher smiled. She had heard the question before. Everyone asked it eventually. We are peaceful. We have been for 50 years. But we're peaceful because we can choose to be, not because we must be. That's the difference. What if someone attacks us again? Another student asked. The teacher looked out the window at the ships in orbit. They were sleeker now, more advanced, but still just as deadly. Then we'll remind them why humanity is not to be pushed too far. But I don't think anyone will. Because everyone remembers. Remembers what? The day the mask dropped, the teacher said. The day the galaxy learned what humanity truly is. We're not conquerors. We're not pacifists. We're survivors. And survivors do whatever it takes to protect their own. She pulled up the final image of her lesson, the memorial chamber on Council Station, 2.3 million names carved in black stone. The students fell silent as they always did when seeing it. These people died because we forgot to be prepared, the teacher said softly, because we trusted too much and defended too little. We won't make that mistake again. Not because we want war, but because we remember the cost of being unprepared for it. One student raised her hand. Miss Patterson, my grandfather says he knew someone who died on New Eden. He says we should never forget what happened. Your grandfather is right, Miss Patterson said. We should never forget. Not because we want revenge, but because we need to remember why we built all those ships, why we train all those soldiers, why we stay vigilant even during peace. New Eden is our reminder of what happens when we stop paying attention. The lesson ended and the students filed out, heading to lunch and games and normal teenage concerns. Ms. Patterson watched them go, knowing they lived in a safer galaxy than she had grown up in, a galaxy where humanity's strength kept the peace. In the depths of space, human ships continued their patrols. On Council Station, human diplomats negotiated trade deals and mediated disputes. On Earth and her 73 colony worlds, people lived their lives, raised families, pursued dreams, and above it all, in orbit around every human world and watching over Council Station, warships kept vigil, silent reminders of what humanity could be if pushed too far. The mask had dropped 50 years ago. The galaxy had seen what lay beneath, and the galaxy had learned to respect it. Humanity was no longer the naive newcomer seeking acceptance. They were the guardians, the enforcers, the species that would protect the weak and punish the strong. They were feared and trusted in equal measure. And perhaps most importantly, they had proven that a species could be both peaceful and powerful, that choosing peace didn't mean accepting weakness. The galaxy learned 3 lessons that year, and 50 years later, those lessons still held true. First, humanity's peace was not weakness. It was a choice. Second, a species that nearly destroyed itself makes a terrifying enemy. Third, there are worse things than humanity at peace. Like humanity at war. And so the galaxy thrived, protected by beings who had learned the hard way that peace requires strength, that civilization requires guardians, and that sometimes the price of security is eternal vigilance. New Eden's 2.3 million dead were never forgotten. Their names stood on Council Station as a permanent reminder. A reminder of what was lost. A reminder of why humanity would never again be defenseless. A reminder of the day humanity dropped the mask and showed the galaxy what they truly were. Not monsters. Not conquerors. Just humans, trying their best to be better than they had been, while staying prepared to become what they needed to be. And in the end, that was enough.